Okay, so without further ado, thank you very much for joining us this evening. This evening is very much about post-18 options. So it is about UCAS and university, but it's not exclusively about UCAS and university because we have a large Year 12 cohort. We've got 134 students and they have got different choices about what they want to do following on from us at the sixth form at Roding Valley. So we have the first half of tonight devoted to universities. I'm going to speak about UCAS and introducing UCAS. I'm going to hand over to Florence, who we're really pleased to have with us. Only 2 years ago, she was leaving our sixth form, heading on to Exeter University. And we're going to hear from her about her experiences as a student at an absolutely outstanding university. Exeter is rated as, I think, one of the most enjoyable campuses. So we look forward to hearing from her about her experience there. And the second half of tonight, from about 7 p.m. onwards, is I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Mason, who's been our careers advisor at Roding Valley for a very, very long time. She's going to speak to everybody about alternative routes besides going on to university, including apprenticeships. And following on from her, we also have another guest joining us, Mr. Stephen Isherwood, who is our Careers Enterprise Advisor. And we're really, really pleased to have him with us this evening. And we hope that what we're going to do is give you a broad range and a real introduction to all the different pathways open to your children and to our students, and so that all of us can best support them in making the right decision for them. My name is Laura Curling. I've recently taken over as Director of Sixth Form while Miss Wheaton is on maternity leave. I feel very strongly about giving all students what they need to get into the best university they possibly can, if that is the right decision for them, and supporting them with their alternative routes should they not want to go to university. Our team, though, remains a large one, and all of us are happy to help. We all have a role to play in supporting the children at this point and our young adults, supporting them to make the right choices. So all of us as the sixth form team, you're probably familiar with us. It's myself, it's Mr. Worry. He's particularly focused on any pastoral concerns. Mrs. Mason is our head of careers and has been for a very long time. Miss Celliers is our sixth form assistant. She's the one who really sees a lot of students every day, and so does Mrs. Parton, because she's our study supervisor. The tutors are shown there at the bottom of the page, and it's the tutors that will be having they're the initial layer in supporting UCAS applications. So they've got a really important role to play as well. Any subject concerns about your students, as always, direct them initially to that classroom teacher and, if necessary, to their line manager, the head of department. For any day-to-day pastoral concerns, small things, that's their form tutor or academic mentor, as we call them at Roding. Anything that's operational or regarding attendance is Miss Celliers, just a reminder. Miss Mason, I've mentioned. Mr. Worry is primarily pastoral concerns, and my main focus is any curriculum concerns. Okay, so that comes straight to me. If you're not sure, you just use our sixth form office email as usual. Okay, so as I said, 2 halves this evening is split into. First half very much focused on university, and second half focusing on the world of work. We want our students to have absolutely outstanding support, and we've already had a lot of activities and PD sessions geared up to support the students in the best possible applications now going forward. So our PD programme runs all the way up from year 7 to the end of year 13, and there's been all sorts in there that is very, very relevant to them at this next stage in their careers. So world of work workshops, university workshops, advice on how to research universities, CV writing, interview preparation. Coming up, they're going to have those contracts in place for their work experience placements at the end of the year. Student finance comes a little later so that it's fresh in their mind. That's why that's in red. And we also took along some students to a Bancrofts open evening. Today, I issued them with a booklet all about applying to UCAS, all about personal statements with some really excellent examples in there. We've got a lot on offer to our students. Every week they get a sixth form bulletin. They have careers talks they can sign up to that interest them. Most recently, we've had an architect, we've had a recruitment agency, and at busy points in the year, we're having one of those a week. So it's really, really a lot to choose from. All sorts of workshops, often run by Miss Hodges, who's very, very active in getting students applying for medicine, but also applying to some of the summer schools and days at Oxbridge. We're really, really grateful for her help. Careers Fest is something they've already done, and the University of Kent trip as well. Okay, and actually our head girl will be heading to University of Kent this summer, grades dependent, to do medicine. So really, really nice, strong connections with that as well. Now, getting a degree is the next step for a lot of students, particularly those who are very academic. And we say to them, and we say to you, you know, having a degree can really, really benefit them. It can help them in their chosen career. There are so many careers that you simply couldn't get that job unless you had a degree. So being a teacher, you can't do that without a degree. Being a doctor, the same sorts of things. It's about developing that knowledge on the subject that you're most passionate about. So now they've already narrowed their choices so much down to 3. But going on to university, they have to make that one choice. And, you know, assuming that they are passionate about that one subject, they really are going to get so much knowledge in that one field. But it's also about the experience. So university could be the best time in their life. It might be the first time they've moved out of home. They could be meeting with people from all over the world. University is increasingly taking more international students now. So there is that social aspect to it as well. It costs less than £30 to apply. They've simplified things this year, UCAS. I think it's £27 exactly, and that's no matter whether you end up using extra or not, UCAS extra. It keeps your options open. So we encourage all students to start that UCAS application. And by the way, there aren't just university courses on there. There are also apprenticeships on UCAS. We want the students to have their options open. On average, graduates earn more. They might meet future friends for life. It's a great opportunity to become more independent, and there's no upfront costs. The student is going to take on quite a lot of debt potentially, but that will come later and only be repaid at a point in their life when they can genuinely afford it. So there are so many benefits. This morning, in our assembly, we had a celebration assembly this morning. It was really, really wonderful. And following on from that, we launched UCAS. And what I mean by that is we asked every student to log into UCAS and to start their own application, simply the very early stages, linking it to us as a school, Roding Valley, and linking it to their form tutor, which will now enable us to have access to their application as they progress it. The first thing that we've asked them to do is to start working on their personal statement. Now, most students who know they want to go to university already know which subject is their favourite and which subject they're likely to want to pursue if they were to go to university. If they don't, then this is a really, really critical stage for them. So please do have those conversations with your children at home. What is it that they want to study? And why is it they want to study that? Do they want to be living at home and commuting in to save on those loans? Or do they not? Do they absolutely not want to be tempted to do that? Do they want to leave, the London area entirely, go to a university that's much further apart, so they're not tempted to do that and they do get the full social experience? Could they consider studying overseas? I know we have at least one applicant this year from our current Year 12s who has an offer for Harvard. This is something that we're very, very keen to support with. And, if it is something that interests them, it's worth looking into. It's difficult for them to choose because there's so much choice out there. There are over 50,000 undergraduate courses for them to choose from. But being online at UCAS will enable them to do that. There's the Course Hub, which is designed to allow students to search by subject, search by region of the UK, and allow them to look up, well, what grades do I need to get into that university if that's the one I want to go to? Or if I want to do art, which is the best university for art? So UCAS is designed to help them through something called the UCAS Hub. It's designed to help them find the right course for them. When they've decided that they want to do what course they want to do, they get 5 choices. Okay, and there are a few exceptions to that, and included in that there is a limit. If they want to apply to Oxford or Cambridge, they can only apply to one or the other. So that will leave 4 other choices for other universities. Okay, so they make 5 choices, and what we suggest is that after they've done all of that research on UCAS about which course is the right one for them, they've researched league tables, they've looked at the Good University Guide, and they've heard from students about their experiences there. We ask them to be ambitious but realistic. So it's not a good idea, if the predictions are 3 Cs, to be aiming for universities where you need an A star and 2 A's. It should be within grasp. And as I said, that doesn't mean not being ambitious, but it means being realistic at the same time. It's a good idea to have a range of entry criteria. There would be very little point applying to 5 universities that all had subject entry requirements of AAA. And that's because when you choose a firm and an insurance offer, your insurance offer should be a little below your firm choice. If it weren't, then on results day, if you were to miss the grade boundaries for your first choice, then you have, of course, missed them for your insurance choice as well. And that's what happens. The students choose their 5. They will get an acceptance or a rejection for each, and they have a deadline in June the following year by which they have to have accepted or rejected the place. If they don't do that, they do all disappear, and they would need to then start again with UCAS Extra. Okay, but they have to apply for 5. Actually, it doesn't have to be 5. They can apply for up to 5. If it's Oxbridge, it's one or the other, Oxford or Cambridge, and 4 other choices. They then make a firm and an insurance choice, and all others are declined following that June deadline next year. Okay. If your students, if your young adults at home haven't been on lots of university visits, then it is a good idea over summer to spend some time doing that with them if you possibly can, because getting a feel for the university is really, really hard to recreate through any prospectuses. It's something I really, really recommend. This is another thing you can look at. The Sunday Times produce a Good University Guide every single year. 2023's version is out there. I've put the link for this in the slides, and I will be sharing the slides as well with all students in year 12. So they'll all have access to tonight's presentation and the links at the bottom. Definitely do your homework. What I will say about this is every year, every league table that's produced, there are international league tables as well. They all differ slightly, but every year Oxford and Cambridge are sitting at the top. Today in Assembly, we celebrated how high the attainment is among year 12 at the moment. And we had 34 students who are sitting on an average grade of an A or an A star. That is absolutely exceptional, but I guarantee that I won't have 30 plus applications for Oxbridge. And I question why. The students, I believe, should always consider Oxbridge if their grades are potentially high enough. So if they're sitting on 3 A's at the moment, if they're sitting on A stars at the moment, why not give it a shot? And often the students say to me, well, it's not for me. They've got stereotypical views that are not true. Or they say, well, I wouldn't get in. You don't know unless you try, and you've got to have that sense of self-belief. And Oxbridge, yes, it's not for those students who are sitting on 3 Bs. Okay, so the predicted grades are too low in that case, and they're not going to have the likelihood of them being invited for interview is virtually zero. Okay, so but if the grades are there, I encourage all those students to go for Oxbridge as one of their 5 choices. And that's because they are ranked at the top of those league tables every single year, year after year. The quality of the teaching is exceptionally high, and university tuition fees are the same no matter where you go. So you are effectively getting more for your money if you're at Oxbridge than anywhere else, because you have sometimes one-to-one tuition, but certainly very small group tuition. And second to none, the quality of the education. So please do encourage all of our students in year 12, encourage them to be ambitious, really do their research. Do visit the universities, as I've said. If you can possibly look for those open days that take place on weekends, many of the universities offer those. That's brilliant. But if not, the leave of absence form, that will be authorised, because obviously we think that this is a very, very valuable thing for them to be doing. Okay. So as I said, this morning, the students have done the very, very first stage, just literally to open a UCAS application. They now need to write their personal statements by July. In the background, all their subject teachers are doing the initial stage of the reference, and form tutors, when we get back in September, collate that reference and bring it together as one reference for the student. And the personal statement should be no more than 1 page. Okay, we say that's roughly about 47 lines. It's 5,000 characters. Sounds like a lot. It really isn't much. Okay, and they've really got to get it across quickly, because the universities are telling us that they're spending sometimes 2 minutes per application. The personal statement and the predicted grades are the most important parts of the UCAS application. The reference is a really, really small part and holds very little sway. Okay. The universities want to see why that student wants to study that course. Are they passionate? Is that coming through? What they're very interested in is extracurricular, or what we call supercurricular. So does that go beyond what's just on the narrow specification for that subject? Have they been watching TED Talks? Have they been reading the news? Have they been reading journal articles and reading around their subjects? Then they're interested in them as a person. What is it? What are their qualities? But don't spend too long on this. The primary focus must be why that course, why you are an outstanding person for that course, and your interests and extra sort of, grade 8 in music, black belt karate, absolutely fantastic. Bring those in there. But we say to aim for about 20% on the non-academic. Mentioning responsibilities, brilliant. Being reflective, mentioning authors and writers, articles they've read to really demonstrate that wider reading. Being clear and concise. As I said, admissions officers at universities are not spending huge amounts of time on each of these. So it needs to be to the point. They've explicitly said they're not looking for flowery and colourful language. Don't, in that personal statement, mention a specific institution, because if you're applying for 5, they will all see that. Don't talk about the A-level courses. They know what's on the A-level courses. Don't plagiarise. UCAS will know. Don't lie, and don't exaggerate. Okay, all of these things could lose you your place at university should it be offered. And lastly, make sure that it's been spell checked. Silly mistakes could cost them dearly. And parents can really support this process. As I said, they're just starting working on their first drafts now, due at the end of next week. Do remind them about super and extracurricular activities, even if that is just, did you see that article in the news today about that earthquake? Did you see, if you're interested in politics, what's happening about this change to the NHS, proposed change to the NHS? Those kinds of conversations can be so valuable to them at this point. Try to support them, proofread for them, help them remember how brilliant they are. So many of our year 12s are very, very humble. A little of that, great. Too much, and we don't see that self-confidence coming through. Okay, and we really need them to have that confidence and self-belief. They will be feeling under pressure. They've just finished the end of year 12. They've just finished their year 12 PPEs. Now they've got their personal statements to write. The last week of term, they've got work experience. There is still an awful lot going on at this point in summer term. So please, they shouldn't feel under too much stress. Keeping them calm is also really, really important at this point. As I said, the reference is our responsibility, not theirs. We're already working on that in the background to be collated by tutors, and it's been shortened this year, which reflects that UCAS do, in a way, deprioritise the reference in comparison to other parts. Okay. The GCSE grades are really, really important. I would say more so than the predicted, because the GCSE grades are factual, they are in place, and obviously anything could happen in the run up to exams. They're based on evidence, and the universities they want this hard data. Okay. Student finance. This is a very, very brief summary. I think the main point to make here is tuition fees have been capped at £9,250 per year. They've been there for a few years now, and that's a lot of money, but it doesn't get repaid until after the student has left university and is earning enough money to pay it back. And on top of that, separately, there's a maintenance loan. Okay, for some students, they may qualify for a maintenance grant. And then the maintenance loan that goes on top depends on whether they're going to be living in London or outside London. They get a bit more if they're living in London. And then if they're living at home with parents, they won't be eligible for as big a grant. Then on top of that, you've got many of the universities offering quite generous scholarships and bursaries and grants to those for very specific things. Often it is means tested, but there are grants for other things, for example, for sports scholarships. So definitely worth researching as part of choosing that course. And for those students thinking about Oxbridge, the bigger colleges tend to be very, very wealthy, and they can be much more generous with the grants that they give out. So that's another thing to consider. There is a fantastic page by Martin Lewis all about student loans. It's been updated in the last year. This video is a few years old. This is still the most recent one he's produced, and the link to his up-to-date text on his website is again in this slide, which I'm going to share with students. As I said, lots of this going on already, and some dates for your diary here. We've launched it today. We want the first personal statement in at the end of next week, please. When the students come back to school after the summer, we'd like them to have redrafted that personal statement and make it that bit better. The big UCAS deadline is the 31st of January. For non-Oxbridge, non-medicine, non-dentistry, for everything else, the deadline is the 31st of January. But for those students thinking about medicine, dentistry, veterinary or Oxbridge, there is an earlier deadline of the 16th of October. And added to that is the fact that many of those require an entrance exam. History, for example, do something called the HAT test, and the registration for that is at the end of September. So those students thinking about those courses need to know that now, and they need to, over summer, have researched what the entry requirements are, ready to be registered for those exams. Okay, so the big deadline, 16th of October, and then for everything else besides those ones I've mentioned, 31st of January. Those are the main deadlines to be looking out for. Okay. Now, I think really all of that is something I've said before. I'm going to stop presenting now, and I'm going to hand you over to Florence, who is speaking to us from, as I said, the University of Exeter. And she'll do a much better job of introducing herself than I will, I'm sure. Florence, thank you for coming.
No problem. So, hello everyone. My name is Florence, and I went to Roding. I left 2 years ago now. The 2 years have completely flown by since. So hopefully you can see my presentation. I just wanted to sort of start off first by introducing myself. So I am a second-year politics student, and I thought the best thing to do was to show you snapshot of my university experience. So I've put together some pictures of my highlights first and from second year. So here we have me filming for our TV station, our radio station, talking at a panel with the Feminist Society, speaking in a debate. I did also include some pictures of me studying and in lectures because I thought, that is actually a part of my university experience as well. But it just sort of goes to show, as you said earlier, that university can be literally the best experience of your life. And I think for me, that's definitely been the case so far. I've had so many different opportunities and experiences I would not have been able to have if I had gone to university, including one of them is me going to Germany, going to Mannheim, the United Nations Society. I had an all expenses paid trip because I was chairing. So that is just the kind of thing I forgot to do at secondary school. Then I was able to share that at university. So as related, I go to the University of Exeter. We are a Russell Group university, which means we are known for our research. This goes across the board, which includes science, but also social sciences and humanities like I study. These are just the classic facts about Exeter. So we are consistently rated top 150 in the world and usually within the top 20 in the UK. For my subject specifically, in the top 10. We also have these different awards for our campuses and for our different sustainability things we've been working on recently. I know that's been a focus of our university. We have a university, it's 65. We have nearly 30,000 students across the whole university. But the University of Exeter itself is made up of 3 campuses. We have 2 in Exeter and 1 in Pembroke and Cornwall. So I study on the largest campus, which is called Streatham, which is in Exeter itself. As I said, we are a Russell Group university, but we are also one of the few Russell Group universities to also have the Teaching Gold Award, which means not only are we great at research, but your lecturers are also very good at teaching. So I personally found that at my university, and I know this is the case for my other friends who go to Russell Group universities, that they just have phenomenal teaching, whether it comes to the feedback they receive or being able to visit office hours, things like that. We are also consistently the #1 sports university in the South Wales and have over 50 athletics union sports clubs and over 250 guild registered societies. So that sort of shows university isn't just about the academic side. Yes, you are there to get a degree and that is great and you should be doing your work. Outside of your degree, there's so much else you can do. I've thrown myself to everything that hasn't been my degree, although I have done that as well. But university is such an amazing experience, and I'm a student ambassador for the university, so that's sort of why I'm here today. And what I really keen on also is encouraging state school students, so sort of like kids at Roding Valley basically, to apply to great universities and really try their best. I work with a lot of state school kids, especially in the southwest area, who are having these amazing experiences when they come to university that they thought would have them before. This is something I wanted to focus on when I'm talking about university. This is about how to come to a decision about where you want to apply, and then once you get your offers, where specifically you want to go. So this, first of all, is split into 2, so both the course and the life aspect, because I believe when you're thinking about it, you can all split it into 2. So the course, you first consider, does the university offer what you want to study? So generally, if you're doing something like English literature or biology, most universities will offer that. But if you're looking for something more specialist, maybe neuroscience, not every area is going to do that. So you first of all have to check that. Then comes specialisms. So this is sort of difficult. You need to look at specifically what your university focuses on in a course. So, for example, in my course, Exeter has a focus on public policy, which is something I've been interested in throughout my degree. And so I looked at that before I came, and that was a factor in my decision. Results and assessments can vary between universities, whether they sort of focus on traditional coursework and essays, or if they're sort of transitioning to different types of assessment, whether that be group presentations and things like that. Also, module choice and flexibility. Now, this isn't the case for all courses. Usually STEM subjects, you have more compulsory modules because there are certain things you just have to know. But with humanities, sciences, stuff like you get to choose what you're interested in and tailor your degree to you, or do you have more compulsory sort of foundation modules you have to take? Now, rankings is next, but that can include anything from league tables, but also student satisfaction. The every year publishes a student satisfaction survey, and that is the best way to hear from actual students who study there about what they think about the university they've been at and whether they felt supported and if they've enjoyed their time. Facilities is also next. Again, this differs on what you're looking at. If you're doing a degree that say involves a lot of lab time, perhaps the facilities are going to matter more to you, whereas for me, facilities don't really matter as much for my course. And then finally there you have employment. Now, most universities will publish employment statistics, sort of for each course, but maybe for each faculty. And it's worth looking at how many people go into jobs or into further study after they've graduated. So those are all sort of the academic things that people should sort of take into consideration. And then sort of the life aspects. So distance from home. For me, I definitely want to be quite far away from home. That is sort of why I chose Exeter in the end. But some people would prefer to be closer to home so they can, have that support if they need it, or be able to go home more frequently than perhaps I do. Costs across the country do differ. There are places where it is definitely cheaper to be a student. So sort of anecdotally, I've heard from my friends who go to university up north, a lot of living costs tend to be lower just because of where they are. Whereas obviously if you're living in London or just indeed the south, generally that is less expensive. Now, the surrounding area can be a factor for consideration. For Exeter, it certainly is, because the southwest is just an absolutely stunning location. Honestly, I think pretty much everyone should just try and go there. But if you're looking to sort of get out of the university and explore, then that's definitely an option you have. The next factor is campus versus city university. So do you want all your buildings to be sort of in one place, or city university tend to be more spread around in buildings in different places? Originally, I planned on going to city university, but I chose Exeter in the end because actually I enjoy going on campus and just spending the day there and bumping into people I know. For me, I really enjoy the size. So Exeter is a pretty medium-sized university today. Some people want to go to a massive university where there are lots of people that they can meet, maybe from other countries, but other people tend to go for a smaller university, perhaps, if they want to feel sort of anonymous, they want to be known. That's also a factor. And then sports societies. Generally, these are pretty similar across universities. All universities will offer similar societies under their students' unions. But again, if there's something you're particularly keen on, then it's worth having a look. And then finally, do consider accommodation options. So whether you want to set up a suite, or perhaps you want your own studio rather than having a shared kitchen. These are all different factors I always say students should consider. But the biggest thing is that the weighting and what you actually think about on what matters for you. So again, like facilities wasn't really too much of a thing for me, but league tables definitely were. I wasn't particularly looking at the cost of going to university, but I was really considering campus versus the city and the distance. So basically, that's just my main bit of advice when it comes to looking at universities. But I had an absolutely fantastic time studying at Exeter, and if anybody is unsure about university or if they don't think it's for them, I would just really encourage them to do their research and to look at the courses, find out what you're really interested in, because if a university is right for you, it can be absolutely amazing. So that's me finished there. I'll now hand over to Mrs. Mason so she can talk a bit more about careers.
Right, I hope you can all see me and hear me quite well. So, as Miss Curling said, I'm Mrs. Mason, Donna Mason. I've been the careers advisor for some time now at Roding Valley. And I thought this evening I'd talk to you a little bit about apprenticeships and what I offer the students whilst they're in the sixth form. I know Miss Curling's already gone into detail a little bit about what they've already had. These are the things that they have had and should be doing, things like open days, insight days and summer schools coming up. I put so much information on the weekly careers bulletin and on our microsite, and I do retweet, and I'm also on LinkedIn. Any jobs that I actually see and apprenticeships that I see vacant at the moment in time. So I thought I would just reiterate and explain a little bit more what apprenticeships and degree apprenticeships are, because we are a firm believer at Roding Valley that you should have all of the information to be able to make an informed decision. And whilst university is for many students and they really want to go and they know they're going to enjoy it, equally there are many students who would actually prefer to get an apprenticeship or a degree apprenticeship. And there's been a lot in the media recently, especially from Martin Lewis, about the degree apprenticeship route and the cost now of an actual degree. So it's worth making sure you've got all of the information so that you can actually make an informed decision. So apprenticeships really do provide an opportunity to get a qualification that's debt-free. And they do go all the way up to master's level now, and you would still be earning a salary at that time. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on the next slide, but basically a student would be employed by a company, and they would do part-time study as well as working in that company. It depends on the type of apprenticeship that they take on. It would last between 3 and 5 years, and competition is actually fierce. Students are often under the illusion that, oh, well, I'll just get an apprenticeship. It's a lot easier than going to university. And actually, it's the reverse. Apprenticeships are very, very competitive, and it is actually a really long process to achieve one. So if you were applying for an apprenticeship, it is a contract of employment. You would earn a salary from day one. 90% of students tend to stay in their employment at the end of it. Lots of students often say to me, oh, I think I'll go to uni because I wouldn't get any social life if I had an apprenticeship. That's really not quite true, because a lot of the companies now tend to group all their apprentices together, and they make sure that they are well looked after and that they have got a social life. What you would do is gain a degree free of charge. The company pay all of the costs, so there's no fees to pay at all. And the one thing to consider as well that's actually quite important is that you can relocate. So if the companies, for instance, were in Bournemouth and you really wanted to go for that company and that job, they will often help you relocate. They will put you together with other students, and bear in mind that you are being paid a salary. So actually, you would be able to pay the rent if you were in shared accommodation. And I'll say again, it's not the easy route. And the reason for that is that you are employed. You are working generally 4 days a week with 20% off from the job. And in that 20%, you either go to university or you complete the study and the training that your company is asking you to do. So it's not an easy route to university, but it's a great route if you want to get straight out into the workplace, but equally you would like to get a degree. These are the levels, and parents and students often say to me, we're a little bit confused about the levels. So if you were in year 11 and you were applying, you would generally apply for either a level 2 or a level 3 qualification. The majority of students in the sixth form would be applying for apprenticeships that are called higher apprenticeships or degree apprenticeships, which include the level 6 and the level 7. So sometimes you may find that there would be an apprenticeship in a field perhaps that you want to get into that's only available as a level 3. So my advice would still be, if you wanted to get into that industry, is you would take the level 3 and then you would work your way up within the company. Some companies will advertise an apprenticeship at level 4, but when you've completed it, they would actually ask you if you would like to move on to a degree level apprenticeship. So there's often lots of things that you can go into further down the line. So what should I do to prepare for applying? So you really need to get lots and lots of things on your CV. And this is why we have all the leadership roles at Roding Valley for students to step up to and apply for. And by participating in these things, it really evidences to an employer that you've got the skills they're seeking. I had an employer into school not so long ago, and she was absolutely blown away by our house captains and that we have lots of house competitions and things like that. They really, really highly regard any skills like communication, problem solving, team leadership, anything along those lines. They also really value work experience and insights events. And one of the biggest things to come out of COVID is virtual work experience. It's been a real big bonus that students can really try a whole range of different industries. And if you have got a work experience placement set coming up in the next few weeks, and it isn't quite in the field that you want to get into, my advice is to participate in as many placements as you can or insight events where potentially you could network with employers. And that's what the employer talks have been about at school. It's about finding out about different industries, networking with people, connecting with them on LinkedIn, and really making sure that you are out there taking up every possible opportunity to get your foot in the door somewhere. You do need to get your CV and cover letters ready, because when you come back into year 13, a lot of the programs will actually start early, and you will have to apply very early on in September or October. And we do advise that you practice for interviews and assessments online. And we also recommend you get a part-time job, but really limit it to 8 hours a week so that it doesn't interfere with your studies. So as I mentioned, you will be starting to apply from September in year 13, dependent on when the companies advertise them. And you may have to do telephone interviews, video interviews and assessment days, and your CVs need to be outstanding. And that's where I come in. If you want CV support, if you want my help, if you want any kind of help to apply with the applications, you need to just keep dropping in and out of my office, and I'll help you with those applications so that we make sure that the applications are as good as they can be. So where would you find them? You would find them in a whole range of different places. There are so many links on the bulletin. I love Rate My Apprenticeship. They really give you lots of clear information. They've got the top 100 employers to research and lots of info. You'll also find a huge amount of information on UCAS now around apprenticeships, and on the weekly sixth form bulletin. Obviously, that gets updated weekly, and in year 13, I would say it's an essential for you to read it. There's a few useful websites for you here to have a look at. There are also a huge range of other websites, and if you come and have a chat with me, if you've got a specific industry in mind, again, I can share those with you. These are just some of our student success stories of the places they've gone on to. We do have some really good relationships with a lot of these companies. So if a student has something in mind that they want to get into, it's well worth doing a little bit of research about that company, finding out about their application process and getting their cover letters ready so that they're good to go as soon as those jobs are actually released. I'm going to hand over now to Stephen Isherwood. He is our enterprise advisor. He's been working with us now for about 5 years, and he is an absolute expert on anything related to student recruitment, student development and apprenticeships. I'm glad to welcome you here this evening, Stephen. So I'm going to hand straight over to you now, and you can start your presentation.
Hi, Donna. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. I'm just trying to get my, there we go, that's the one, choosing the right presentation to share with you. Here we go. You're presenting on your screen. There we go. If you see me looking sideways, it's because I'm looking at my other monitor, which has got the slides on there. So just remind me what I wanted to say to you. So great to be talking to you all again. I've worked with Donna for a little while now, and I've done this presentation before, both in person and in lockdown. So what I want to do really is, and this should tie in quite nicely with Florence's input from Exeter University I know well, done quite a bit of work with, and also what Donna was telling you around apprenticeships. So my job is I run an organisation called the Institute of Student Employers, the ISE. We are an employer-led organisation, so that means that we represent employers who recruit both graduates and people straight from school onto career-related development programs, etc. But we also work with a number of universities and a number of schools as well. My own background, I used to run student recruitment for EY, Ernst & Young. Before that, so I was at PwC. So I've worked in this whole graduate student recruitment space for 25 years now, dare I say it, and been involved in the recruitment of thousands upon thousands of young people into organizations over all those years. And I'll use some of that experience just as I go through some of the slides that I want to talk to you about, because what I really want to do is to give you an idea of that broader landscape that's out there, the kind of thing that employers look for, and a little bit of advice to help you navigate that as you continue through education and transition into work. A little bit of background into my career. And the reason I thought I'd put this up is a little bit more about me, but also to demonstrate how careers can be a little bit like crazy paving. My dad couldn't believe it when I left my first job after about 4 years, because he did the same job from when he left school right to the very point that he retired. That does still happen sometimes, but actually it's becoming rarer and rarer as jobs change, industries change. So actually people quite often, sort of move about roles either internally or externally. So I'm one of those people that actually did start a training program after I did my A levels, but then actually I also went to university. I went to university when I was 25. And studied in London, so I kind of got it from both angles. So I did my A levels. I didn't feel ready to go to university. I was more interested in going to work. I worked for big retailer, had a Saturday job, and I said, "What can you offer me?" And they said, "Well, we've got this management training program. It's our graduate program, but we take people that we know at your level and age onto that program." So that sounds all right. I'll do that. So I did that for a few years. Quite enjoyed it. Got quite a lot of responsibility. Then, to be honest with you, I didn't see myself doing that for the rest of my my career. I was quite interested in sales. I did 2 or 3 years as a sales consultant as well, in a couple of industries, corporate account type sales. And then after doing that as well, I thought, do you know what? I don't see myself doing any of those for my future. I want to do something a little bit different. I'd always wanted to live in London. Applied to university, went to university. Really enjoyed that. I studied business studies. I studied at Westminster, based on Regent Street, and really enjoyed my course. Got a lot out of it. And interesting, going back to study a little bit later meant I knew I was choosing a subject I'd enjoyed, and also having worked in relatively demanding jobs, actually, dealing with the conflicting demands of student life actually was relatively straightforward. But after that, that's when I joined the world of recruitment. So an organisation called Coopers & Lybrand that don't really exist anymore. They merged into PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. In my first couple of years there, I'd always wanted to go and work in a ski resort. Never even been skiing. Never even been into the mountains. So I did get a job to run a bar in a small ski resort in Austria, and PwC very nicely gave me a career break. So I did that as well. And then ever since that, I went through, recruitment officer, recruitment manager, became head of recruitment, and now am ISE CEO. Well, joint CEO, but that's a whole other story. So yes, so the reason I'm saying that is, that's my career path. You will have many different career paths. And I guess one of my bits of advice is, it is important the decisions you make now. It is important you make the most of the opportunities, make the most of your education. But actually, the decisions you make don't limit you for life. You will know more about yourselves as you go along your career journey. You'll have different opportunities, and different activities will come along your way. So they've done it. So that's a bit about my background. So let's go on to a little bit more around actually what can I tell you about skills, and often we talk about skills for life. There we go. Yeah, sorry, I'm just seeing some of the comments come through, making sure you can see my slides. So yes, so quite often we talk about skills for work. Also, I think the skills that actually help you work well are also the skills for life. And often we think the two are separate, but in my experience, they're pretty much the same. So here's my kind of summary of what employers tell us they're looking for when they hire students, either straight from school and college or straight from university. It does get quite confusing. There's lots of phrases out there, lots of language, can be a little bit difficult to navigate. So this is my kind of summary. So let's do it by these pictures on the screen. Starting the top left, working with people, teamwork. I'm sure you've heard this repeated to you very, very often. But teamwork is really important, because at work you work with people, and teamwork isn't always this kind of just this nice fluffy thing. It's actually being able to get stuff done, to work with people, working people in different teams, different departments, work with clients in your client driven, if you're a client driven business. So yeah, working with people, really important. Moving to the middle of the screen at the top, the person scratching their head, that's like problem solving. The employers that we work with who run their student development programs, they're hiring people who are going to be doing complex work. We live in this very much this changing world of work. AI, ChatGPT has got everything up in the air and changing all that again. So employers need people who can solve problems, who can use their intellect in a very practical way to the needs of the workplace. Moving to the top right, the microphone. That's not because every job demands that you're able to stand up and speak in front of other people. That can be quite useful, being able to do presentations, getting your ideas across, etc. I'm talking about the need to communicate, whether that's in writing, whether that's just talking to people in meetings, or whether it's something a bit more formal in the way that I'm doing now, for example. If you can't get your ideas and your thoughts across, if you can't listen to other people and understand what they're telling you, actually you're going to have a very difficult time actually doing the job that you need to do. Moving to the bottom left, the alarm clock. That's not just about getting up early in the morning and getting to work on time, although that is quite a useful thing to do. It does create a good impression. It's about actually managing your time. Work is quite often less structured now than it used to be when I started work. So actually being able to deal with multiple demands, manage your time effectively, get things done to deadlines, etc. Really, really important. The picture of the guy climbing a rock is not because you need to be a rock climber in most lines of work, but it is about being able to take risks. Employers often tell me that particularly their new hires are sometimes a bit too afraid to take risks, maybe put themselves out to their comfort zone. I sometimes think one of the difference between student life and working life is that in your student life, there is very often an answer. And you are marked according to that answer, whether it's right or wrong. To be honest with you, in the business world that I operate in, I've just been at a board meeting today for the ISE. A lot of the things we're dealing with, we don't actually really know what the future holds. So the answer is a little bit uncertain. So quite often we're talking about how we balance and manage risks. So being able to take the right risks is another important skill. Challenge yourself, put yourself out there. And the final image at the bottom is data, not because everybody needs to be a computer coder, needs to know the ins and outsides of tech, but almost every job I know has a lot more data involved in it now than it ever used to. I remember people saying when spreadsheets came out that, that's going to make life so much easier because actually spreadsheets will do all the work and we all be able to finish early on a Thursday or Friday. Nope, spreadsheet just meant that there was an awful lot more for us to count in different ways of counting it. So data is a reality for lots of roles. Some of you might be considering psychology, for example. Psychology has quite high numerical content because it's not just about people and understanding people, it's understanding how research is done and what data tells you about people. So yeah, data really, really important. So what does that mean in practice? Can I simplify that a little bit with you? So I mentioned teamwork. Teamwork is about working with people. Working with people you can work with and get things done. Practical intelligence, being able to solve problems that are actually relevant to the organization that you work for. I interviewed somebody once who said, I don't want to get involved in clients, their problems. I want you to just give me problems that I can go and, sit away on my own and work on them. I'm like, well, you've got to be able to deal with clients. You've got to understand clients and articulate your solutions back to them. So intelligence, yes, but a practical intelligence. I'll come back to the third point in a sec. Resilience. Resilience is one of those words that comes up more and more often with employers. And in reality, it's just being able to deal with the difficulties of the workplace, a changing environment, dealing with deadlines, dealing demands from people. There might be your managers, it might be the clients that you work with. And also, it's interesting how much this comes up with the employees I work with. When people hit the world of work for the first time, it's like, a bit of this job can be quite boring and quite dull. It is. You talk to anybody, whatever they do, whatever world they live in, whether they're a prime minister, a billionaire, pop star, they will say that actually, quite often there's the chore stuff that they have to do the interesting stuff. So resilience is really important. And that third point, just coming back to that, lots and lots of employers don't really mind what you study. They're quite open to recruiting from all different academic disciplines. So quite often they're comparing people from quite different backgrounds. And often that difference is somebody who can demonstrate they've got a real keenness to do that job. I mean, like I said, I did business studies. Most of my career has been in business because I just generally enjoy business. And I think that's come across in the past when I've done interviews. So if you can't demonstrate that keenness for the jobs that you're applying for, the career path, that could be an indicator actually that you're not doing something that you're really going to enjoy. Enjoying what you do is really important, and something I will come back to. I included this slide. This is the number of people in higher skilled roles working in the UK economy. I'm not going into detail what the slide means, but what this shows is that actually there are more and more skilled roles in the economy. If we're going to talk about labour market analysis, get into that technicalities, normally if this was talking about the number of jobs, you'd be able to see in 2009 when there was a financial crash, there'd be a dip. 2020, you'd see a dip when the pandemic hit. But actually what this tells us is employers are recruiting more and more skilled people as the world gets more complex. So I really say that to emphasize the importance of, yes, getting a good education, but also getting good training, because actually those are the kind of roles that are increasing in the future. I mentioned this a couple of minutes ago. Over 80% of the employers that we recruit don't mind what you study. And you might think, Steve, where does that come from? That sounds a bit nonsense, but it's true. You know, in my world of recruiting accountants, auditors, etc., we recruited people from all degree disciplines, not just those who did accounting and finance. A lot of the law firms we work with at the ISE, you know, roughly 40% of their graduate student intakes don't have a law degree. So, what you study doesn't necessarily have to drive what job you do. Even medical training routes, you can do a conversion course that can put you onto a doctor training program if that's what you're interested. If you change your mind as you do your studies. So yes, what you study doesn't necessarily have to drive what you do. Lots of the tech firms I work with, you know, they often recruit people who are very interested in tech but don't necessarily have that techie background. What they want is people with those broad skills that I was talking about, who are really interested in tech and they can train the technical stuff. So if employers aren't focused on what you are studying necessarily, I mean, I do say that there are routes whereby what you study does lead to the kind of job you do. Very difficult to be an engineer if you haven't done an engineering degree. People who do quantity surveying, for example, will often have studied quantity surveying. So it is important that you do your homework. But it does mean that actually there's an awful lot more choice available to you now. You had Florence talking about her experience at Exeter. You've had Donna talking to you about a number of options, including apprentice pathways. I've talked to you about my various roles I've done in my career. There are lots of different routes available to you. And probably where it was 20 years ago, that maybe those different routes kind of limited what your options might be or where you might end up. That has significantly changed over the years. So you've got apprenticeships, you've got degree options, you've got the going to university option. You've got a whole range of different pathways into work depending on the different roles that you might do. I'm going to use accountancy because it's a sector that I know quite well. I've worked in it for, like I said, a good number of years. So don't take this as the only thing I'm talking about. The reason I'm putting on as an example is that actually, you know, similar routes may apply into the tech world. In fact, they do. But each sector that you're interested in will have different options out there. So it is worth doing your homework. But let me talk about accountancy, because that's quite a good way of demonstrating all the stuff that I've been talking about. So you think that you might want to be an accountant in the future. Well, here are the options that are open to you. You could just go to university. There are sponsored degrees out there. For example, PwC's Flying Start program. I know they work with Newcastle University and a number of others. So that's a sponsored degree. You're a student on campus and you have links to that employers where you do your degree. You could just do an accounting degree, not tied to any employer. You go to university, keep your options open on employers. You do an accounting and finance degree, and that may well lead you to do an accounting and finance role actually when you graduate. So employers definitely do target those roles. Or you could just go, do you know what? I really want to study geography. I may not end up working in geography. It's a subject I love, but that's what I'm going to study. I'm going to do well at it. And whilst I'm at uni, I'm going to work out what I want to do. All of those are perfectly valid options. But the other option, and this has become much more common over the last 5 years, is the work route into a profession. So again, taking that model that you think you might want to be an accountant, well, lots of organisations offer apprenticeships to people leaving school. And I know people from Roding Valley have followed this route in the path. The difference is that you are an employee first, whereas in the other routes you're a student first. Whereas these routes, you will work for an organisation and you will do your studies, your college, etc. You'll do it part-time, sometimes maybe a day a week. Sometimes you might go away for 2 or 3 weeks at a time to do your training. Some of those programs you might actually go onto campus and study at a university for summer. Very different depending on the programs. But you're an employee first. The big difference is with the other routes I was talking about, you you do become a student and you would get into the student loan system. If that's what you choose to do, you would pay tuition fees. The work routes, you're an employee first, so you are paid while you work, and you don't incur those student tuition fees. The other option is some employers have training routes that aren't actually necessarily badged as apprenticeships, but they're training contracts. The key thing to say about all those routes is they're not limited. So on all of those programs, actually, if your goal is to become a chartered, fully qualified accountant, all those routes lead to the same option. And if I go back to my time at EY, people at the very senior level, managing partner level, there were people that came from all those different routes. So as I said, I use that as an example to bring it to life a little bit. Different sectors will have different routes. Like I said, I could have done a very similar model for the tech sector. You can do tech, computer science degrees. You can do degree apprenticeships in computer science. Lots of big organizations like IBM plus smaller organizations have those routes. Or, you could do any degree and get into the tech sector a bit later. And the same for lots of other sectors. Just moving on to a little bit about how you might develop those skills, or how you might get a bit of a better understanding about what you might like to do and what those options might be. Well, I think work experience and part-time work are really important, even if it's not formal work experience called that. Just working part-time. If I go back to my experience, quite often I was hiring people and they'd expect to be able to talk about this big grand internship that they had. But often, I had good examples of people just talking about when they worked part-time on a checkout in a supermarket because they were in a business. They could talk about what they were doing. So these experiences give you practical experience of working life. They can give you real insights into what you do and don't like doing. So, for example, going back to my finance model, maybe you're involved in a club at school. Maybe you'll go on to universities and get involved in the society. Well, you might become the treasurer. You might look after the money. You might not like looking after money, which makes you go, yeah, I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. So good insights into some indications of what you do and don't like doing. And those transferable skills, all those skills I was talking about before, if you think about them, they all apply to those extracurricular kind of activities that you might do. And employers want to hear them. Quite often students make the mistake thinking, the employer doesn't want to hear about, that time I was in that sports team or that play I was in or something like that. But no, they do, because employers know you probably haven't got the relevant work experience. So they look to those examples for evidence that you might have those skills. So really important. And in all this, the important thing is actually that reflection bit. A bit of an old quote here from Socrates: the unexamined life is not worth living. Employers will ask you, what did you learn from that experience? Remember that risk picture? If you take a risk and you do something a bit different, it may work out, it may not. Employers are just as interested in hearing about things that didn't work out if you can say what you learned from it and what you might do differently. So I've got the learning cycle on there, which you may have come across in your studies. This is a really good way of how you can learn and grow and develop your skills, both in the workplace as in general in life, as I mentioned earlier. You do something, you pay attention to actually what you did, what that action may have been. You reflect on it. So if you've done a bit of work experience, reflect on it, think, what went well, what didn't go so well? And then think about what you would do differently. And then the cycle starts again with other experience. It's amazing how many people don't do that really important reflection time. It's really important that you make the time to do it. Because in doing that reflection, you'll get some of these insights. You'll be able to think about, what am I good at? What kind of work am I interested in? Who can I talk to get some guidance? It gives you ammunition to go and talk to Donna, to go and talk to people that you may know about jobs and careers and help them, give their insights in terms of your reflections, which can then lead to a greater understanding of what your options and which of those options that you might want to pursue. And as I said, I've given you an old quote from Socrates, something a bit more contemporary around Taylor Swift. Genuinely, people are making mistakes all the time. The amount of mistakes I make in my job, it happens. That's working life, but it's how you learn from them and how you grow from them. And quite often, it's the things that didn't go so well that give you the most powerful learnings that you are able to use for your future development. Because often when people look at success, and the more I reflect back on people I've seen who've done very well in the jobs they do, that really get the most out of the work that they do, it's this iceberg principle. So often people see the very top actually what they don't see is all the work that goes behind it, the beneath the iceberg piece, that hard work, the dealing with things that go wrong, that bit of self-sacrifice, the disappointment when things don't quite go so well. I think what's really important with this as well is that's why I keep going on about do something you really enjoy, choose subjects to study that you'll enjoy, choose work that you'll enjoy, because actually dealing with the difficult stuff below the surface tends to be more productive. You tend to bounce back from it quicker when you're doing things that you really do enjoy. Because the final little comment from me really is, I guess, to wrap all this up. We covered quite a lot of ground in a very short period of time. I really do think that you've got to really enjoy 80% of what you do to put up with the 20% that you don't. If you're doing something, work-wise, etc., you might be able to do it in the short term. It might be a means to an end to earn a bit of money, get you to the next job, etc. But actually, fundamentally, over a long period of time, you want to be aiming to do something you enjoy, because that will always help you put up with the stuff that you don't necessarily. So there we go through. I've rattled through that quite quickly, Laura. So Donald will have those slides. So more than happy to just click and stop presenting. More than happy to answer any questions that anybody's got. More than happy for people to get in touch with me and explore that a bit further. Hope that was useful.
It really was, Stephen. Thank you so much for coming. We're really, really pleased that so many families were able to join us online this evening. And I think that if nothing else, you can see how complex the landscape is. And actually, there's so many options, more than ever before, open to all of our young people. And our job as teachers, as careers advisors, as parents, all of us have got a role to play. And we need to make sure that these young people are not too weighed down by the pressure of it all, and just simply supported to know their options. Donna said it, do your research, let them know what their options are, and let them choose the right thing for them. This is a really, really difficult time in their life, and the more support that they can get from all of us, the better. As I said, everything from tonight will be available online. We'll share the links for that with you and with all of the Year 12 students. Thank you again to Donna, to Florence, who has left the call, but it's so good to hear from a student, a Roding Valley student in particular, about her personal experiences, and not have one of us oldies telling the students what it is that we think, but somebody that they can relate to. I'll leave you with a couple of things. Last week on a university course, I was with admissions advisors from a range of different universities from across the UK. It is a minefield out there. There's ever such a lot of research to be doing for students and for parents. London universities are very concerned that students are not choosing them because of money concerns. And it's worth bearing in mind that some of the world's leading institutions remain in London. So if living at home is an option and is something that suits your student, I have a neighbour who does this. I'm in Woodford and is having a very, very good first year. It is an option. Okay, it's something worth considering and exploring. Okay, if they want that full student experience, then fine. But those London institutions are very worried about being forgotten because of a cost of living crisis. It's worth not striking them off the bat because of living costs, if that's an option. They're worried as well about Martin Lewis. So I know we mentioned him, and it's worth doing all that research about finances, and it's a shame that so much of this comes back to money. But Martin Lewis is potentially going to have a damaging impact on the number of people who choose university versus apprenticeships. And apprenticeships are a very valid option. And actually listening to Donna, I was thinking, shame I'm still paying off my student loan. I felt like maybe I should have done a degree apprenticeship. The landscape, there are so many options and there is a lot of information out there, but it is about doing that homework, and it is about making sure that we're making choices that are truly the right choice for the student. And it's worth bearing in mind some of the things that are the feedback from universities as you help guide them through this process. Any questions? I know we've run over a little bit and I am sorry. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, I know we did it as a live stream just because of the sheer number of people invited. It would have become unmanageable. But if you do have any questions, contact us in the normal way using the sixth form office to contact us. Okay, thank you very much for coming along, and we look forward to helping every student in year 12 make the best decision for them.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Great job, everyone. That was brilliant.
Thank you, Paige.
No worries. That was really good. That was really
I
informative.
think it's just 3 of us now.